the horrible death of sweating plague. Picture this scene described by someone who lived through it. A contemporary report tells of people dancing in court at 9 p.m, dead by 11 p.m. the same night. This wasn't a fictional horror story, this was the brutal reality of a mysterious disease that once sowed terror across Europe. It had strange names like Sudor Anglicus The Sweat, or even Go by, sir, and know your master. With a terrifying mortality rate nearly 95 to 100% and a progression that tortured victims for only 24 hours, this was a disease that made its victims literally sweat themselves to death. Today we will pull back the curtain on the mystery of this horrific illness, why it seemed to target the most unexpected victims and then vanished as suddenly as it appeared. The sweating sickness first appeared in 1485 in England. This was a time of immense upheaval for England. The War of the Roses, the bloody civil war between the houses of Lancaster and York. This decades-long conflict was nearing its end at the Battle of Bosworth Field in August 1485, where Henry Tudor, of the House of Lancaster, faced King Richard III. And it was at this historic battle that the sweating sickness may have played an unexpected role, an aha moment that changed the course of history. Thomas, Lord Stanley, initially a supporter of Richard III, hesitated to commit his troops to the battle for a reason he called the sweat. This is one of the earliest recorded mentions of the disease. Only a short time later, Stanley did bring his troops into the battle, but it was to support Henry Tudor. This action turned the tide, leading to Richard III's defeat and death, ending the Plantagenet dynasty and giving birth to the Tudor dynasty of Henry VII. At the time, people believed Stanley's change of sides was merely political calculation, but modern historical evidence suggests the plague was likely the real factor. The epidemic was confirmed to have appeared in London just 6 weeks after the battle, right when Henry's victorious army returned to the capital. By September 1485, the first reports of deaths from the sweating sickness appeared in London. A French physician working there, Thomas Forestier, recorded the symptoms, and within just 1 month, by the end of October 1485, the disease had claimed the lives of 15,000 people in London. This figure was shocking, even in an era ravaged by epidemics. The English sweating sickness was not only deadly, it was also strangely terrifying and full of mystery. Based on reports, unlike many other epidemics, it did not affect young children or the elderly. It's hard to believe, but there are hardly any records of children contracting this disease. This is an extremely puzzling point for both contemporary and modern medicine. Equally strange was that this disease seemed to target only the upper and wealthy classes. In 1485 alone in London, the city lost 2 mayors, 3 sheriffs, and 6 aldermen to this disease. Records say that this sickness was the easiest to die of in the world. Its horrifying speed in killing people has baffled generations of researchers. How fast? Remember the terrifying example from the beginning, dancing at 9 p.m, dead at 11 p.m. So what was the cause? Medieval doctors had absolutely no understanding. They offered many theories: poisonous mist, evil spirits, due to diet, excessive exercise, or lack of moderation. The famous physician John Caius, who wrote a book about the disease in 1552, believed the disease was caused by evil vapors and an unclean spirit, but also suggested prevention could be based on diet and moderate exercise. Modern science is still debating the exact cause. The most common current theory is that it was caused by the H0rrible virus, transmitted from rodents like mice or bats. However, other researchers suggest the possibility of carbon monoxide poisoning, anthrax poisoning, or simply due to poor sanitation and contaminated water sources. Some opinions even link outbreaks to natural phenomena like floods or even volcanic activity. But here's the question that makes us think. If the disease spread so quickly and seemed related to sanitation or rodents, why did it choose as its targets wealthy people who generally had better living conditions and were healthier? This is a major contradiction that still has no satisfactory answer. Was there something special about the lifestyle of the nobility that made them more vulnerable? Or was it due to another factor we haven't even thought of? The journey to death from the sweating sickness was a horrific torture. It often began abruptly. The first symptom, terrifyingly, was a feeling of foreboding, unease, a vague fear. When you know its speed and mortality rate, this feeling is completely understandable. Then the sick person would feel very cold and start shivering. Next came severe pain in the shoulders, back, neck and head. And then the most prominent, most ghastly symptom appeared: extreme sweating. Not just ordinary sweat, but a massive amount of sweat, as described, the amount of sweat of Richard Simmons in a sauna. This was accompanied by nausea and a burning sensation all over the body. These symptoms only occurred in the first few hours. After that, although initially feeling cold, the patient's body began to heat up, leading to fever and delirium and a rapid pulse. Some people also reported abdominal pain, liver inflammation and heart pain. Physician John Caius believed that sweating was the body's way of expelling the disease and even encouraged sweating with herbs and warm drinks. However, he also noted that the patient was extremely tired and could fall into a coma. Caius gave the surprising advice to prevent the patient from sleeping. The final stage happened quickly. The patient fell into a state of exhaustion, coma, and then died within just 24 hours after the first symptoms appeared. This speed made it one of history's most terrifying diseases. A chilling difference compared to other epidemics like the Black Death is that the sweating sickness did not create immunity. Survivors of one outbreak could still contract the disease again multiple times and die in later outbreaks. This added to the horror and helplessness in the face of this mysterious disease. This is the part that makes us feel closer and more interested in the horror of the sweating sickness, because it touched even the most powerful people in England, especially the famous Tudor dynasty. King Henry VII, the first king of the Tudor dynasty, was so afraid he had to postpone his coronation in 1485 when the epidemic broke out in London. His fear was real, because the epidemic appeared in the capital right after his victorious army returned. But perhaps the greatest impact on the Tudor royal line was the death of Prince Arthur of Wales, the eldest son of Henry VII and older brother of Henry VIII. Historical sources indicate that Prince Arthur most likely died from this sweating sickness on April 2nd, 1502, a few months before his 16th birthday. This sudden and tragic death completely changed English history, because it cleared the way for his younger brother Henry to become heir to the throne. Prince Arthur's wife, Catherine of Aragon, also fell ill at the same time, but fortunately survived. It was Catherine's later marriage to Henry VIII and her failure to produce a male heir that led to the shocking divorce, the break with the Roman Catholic Church, and the birth of the Church of England headed by Henry VIII. Just imagine, if Arthur had survived, the history of England today might be very different. That younger brother, later King Henry VIII, was very afraid of the sweating sickness throughout his life. He frequently had to flee London and constantly change residences to avoid the epidemic, especially during the 1528 outbreak. A record from 1529 describes the king hastily leaving dozens of miles away just because a lady-in-waiting fell ill. It is said that he changed residences as often as he changed socks. Fortunately for him, and for the later history of England, Henry VIII did not die from this disease. Even those close to Henry VIII were not spared. Anne Boleyn, his mistress and later wife, also contracted the sweating sickness in 1528, but survived. A letter she wrote even mentions the king's chief advisor, Cardinal Thomas Wolsey, also falling ill and luckily surviving multiple times. More sadly, William Carey, husband of Mary Boleyn, Anne Boleyn's sister, died from this disease. But perhaps the most tragic and haunting personal story related to the sweating sickness is that of Henry Brandon and Charles Brandon. They were the two young sons of Charles Brandon, 1st Duke of Suffolk, a close friend of Henry VIII. Their mother, Frances Grey, was a granddaughter of Henry VII, making these two brothers great-nephews of Henry VIII. Henry and Charles were known as brilliant scholars at Cambridge University and were close friends of King Edward VI, son of Henry VIII. In 1551, during the last outbreak of the disease in England, both brothers fell ill. And the horrific thing happened. Henry Brandon, aged 16, died. Just 1 hour later, his younger brother Charles Brandon, aged 13 or 14, also died in the same bed. The sudden and almost simultaneous deaths of two young, promising brothers extinguished their family's title of Duke of Suffolk. This is a heartbreaking example of how this disease stole the lives of young, talented people who held high social positions, a personal tragedy that reached even the elite. The sweating sickness first appeared in 1485, and it wasn't the last time. History records major outbreaks in 1508, 1517, 1528, and 1551. Each time it appeared, it claimed the lives of thousands. The 1528 epidemic is considered the worst in England. It was during this outbreak that the sweating sickness first crossed the English Channel and spread to mainland Europe. It spread to Germany, Poland, Scandinavia, and Russia, causing thousands of deaths, for example, 3,000 people in Danzig alone. Fortunately for Western Europe, it did not spread to Italy or France. The 1528 epidemic was also chillingly recreated in the popular film The Tudors. Remarkably, despite no clear preventative measures being found and the disease retaining its highly contagious nature, the English sweating sickness began to mysteriously disappear after 1551. This disappearance was as sudden and inexplicable as its initial appearance. In subsequent centuries, a similar disease called the Picardy sweat appeared in France from 1718 to 1861. It had many symptoms and seasonal patterns similar to the English sweating sickness. However, the Picardy sweat also had the additional symptom of a rash, which was not recorded in the English outbreaks. This leaves researchers wondering if they were the same disease or not. In summary, the English sweating sickness is a true medical and historical mystery. It killed people at a terrifying speed, seemed to unexpectedly target the healthy and wealthy tortured victims with horrific symptoms, and did not allow the body to build immunity. It changed the course of history by potentially causing the death of Prince Arthur, paving the way for Henry VIII's succession. It haunted the life of Henry VIII himself and claimed the lives of those close to him. And then suddenly it vanished. Even with modern science, its exact cause remains a matter of debate. Why did it suddenly disappear after 1551? What truly caused this disease to fade into history? Consider this. If the sweating sickness hadn't mysteriously disappeared, how might the history of England and Europe have changed? Would the Tudor dynasty have existed as we know it? And the more unsettling question, could a mysterious, deadly disease like this return, and do we truly understand enough about it to cope? These questions remain open, reminding us that even in an age of technology and advanced medicine, history still holds ghosts of the past, mysteries yet to be solved. What do you think about the English sweating sickness? Which theory about its cause and disappearance do you find most convincing? Share your thoughts in the comments below.